To see past the distracting, dopey teenager and glimpse the adaptive adolescent within, we should look not at specific, sometimes startling behaviors such as skateboarding down stairways or dating fast company, but at the broader traits that underlie those acts. Let's start with the teen's love of the thrill. We all like new and exciting things, but we never value them more highly than we do during adolescence. Here we hit a high in what behavioral scientists call sensation seeking, the hunt for the neural buzz, the jolt of the unusual or unexpected. Seeking sensation isn't necessarily impulsive. You might plan a sensation seeking experience, a skydive or a fast drive, quite deliberately, as my son did. Impulsivity generally drops throughout life, starting at about age 10, but this love of the thrill peaks around age 15. And although sensation seeking can lead to dangerous behaviors, it can also generate positive ones. The urge to meet more people, for instance, can create a wider circle of friends, which generally makes us healthier, happier, safer, and more successful. This upside probably explains why an openness to the new, though it can sometimes kill the cat, remains a highlight of adolescent development. A love of novelty leads directly to useful experience. More broadly, the hunt for sensation provides the inspiration needed to get you out of the house and into new terrain, as Jay Geed, a pioneering researcher in teen brain development at NIH, puts it. Also peaking during adolescence, and perhaps aggrieving the ancientry the most, is risk-taking. We court risk more avidly as teens than at any other time. This shows reliably in the lab, where teens take more chances in controlled experiments involving everything from card games to simulated driving. And it shows in real life, where the period from roughly 15 to 25 brings peaks in all sorts of risky ventures and ugly outcomes. This age group dies of accidents of almost every sort, other than work accidents, at high rates. Most long-term drug or alcohol abuse starts during adolescence, and even people who later drink responsibly often drink too much as teens. Especially in cultures where teenage driving is common, this takes a gory toll. In the U.S., 1 in 3 teen deaths is from car crashes, many involving alcohol. Are the kids just being stupid? That's the conventional explanation. They're not thinking, or by the work in progress model, their puny developing brains fail them. Yet these explanations don't hold up. As Lawrence Steinberg, a developmental psychologist specializing in adolescence at Temple University, points out, even 14 to 17-year-olds, the biggest risk takers, use the same basic cognitive strategies that adults do, and they usually reason their way through problems just as well as adults. Contrary to popular belief, they also fully recognize they're mortal, and like adults, says Steinberg, teens actually overestimate risk. So if teens think as well as adults do and recognize risk just as well, why do they take more chances? Here, as elsewhere, the problem lies less in what teens lack compared with adults than in what they have more of. Teens take more risk because they don't understand not because they don't understand the dangers, but because they weigh risk versus reward differently. In situations where risk can get them something they want, they value the reward more heavily than adults do. A video game Steinberg uses draws this out nicely. In the game, you try to drive across town in as little time as possible. Along the way, you encounter several traffic lights. As in real life, the traffic lights sometimes turn from green to yellow as you approach them, forcing a quick go or stop decision. You save time and score more points if you drive through before the light turns red. But if you try to drive through the red and don't beat it, you lose even more time than you would have if you had stopped for it. Thus, the game rewards you for taking a certain amount of risks, but punishes you for taking too much. When teens drive the course alone in what Steinberg calls the emotionally cool situation of an empty room, they take risks at about the same rates that adults do. Add stakes that the teen cares about, however, and the situation changes. In this case, Steinberg added, friends. When he brought a teen's friends into the room to watch, the teen would take twice as many risks trying to gun it through lights he'd stopped for before. The adults, meanwhile, drove no differently with a friend watching. To Steinberg, this shows clearly that risk-taking rises not from puny thinking, but from a higher regard for reward. They didn't take more chances because they suddenly downgraded the risk, says Steinberg. They did so because they gave more weight to the payoff. Researchers such as Steinberg and Casey believe this risk-friendly weighing of cost versus reward has been selected for because, over the course of human evolution, the willingness to take risks during this period of life granted an adaptive edge. Succeeding often requires moving out of the home and into less secure situations. The more you seek novelty and take risks, says Baird, the better you do. This responsiveness to reward thus works like the desire for new sensation. It gets you out of the house and into new turf. As Steinberg's driving game suggests, teens respond strongly to social rewards. Physiology and evolutionary theory alike offer explanations for this tendency. Physiologically, adolescence brings a peak in brain sensitivity to dopamine, a neurotransmitter that appears to prime and fire reward circuits and aids in learning patterns and making decisions. This helps explain the teen's quickness of learning and extraordinary receptivity to reward, and his keen, sometimes melodramatic reaction to success as well as defeat. The teen brain is similarly attuned to oxytocin, another neural hormone, which, among other things, makes social connections in particular more rewarding. The neural networks and dynamics associated with general reward and social interactions overlap heavily. Engage one, and you often engage the other. Engage them during adolescence, and you light a fire. This helps explain another trait that marks adolescence. Teens prefer the company of those their own age more than ever before or after. At one level, this passion for same-age peers merely expresses, in the social realm, the teen's general reaction to attraction to novelty. Teens offer teens far more novelty than familiar old family does. Yet teens gravitate toward peers for another, more powerful reason: to invest in the future rather than the past. We enter a world made by our parents, but we will live most of our lives and prosper or not in a world run and remade by our peers. Knowing, understanding, and building relationships with them bears critically on success. Social savvy rats or monkeys, for instance, generally get the best nesting areas or territories, the most food and water, more allies, and more sex with better and fitter mates, and no species is more intricately and deeply social than humans are. This supremely human characteristics makes peer relations not a sideshow, but the main show. Some brain scan studies, in fact, suggest that our brains react to peer exclusion much as they respond to threats to physical health or food supply. At a neural level, in other words, we perceive social rejection as a threat to existence. Knowing this might make it easier to abide the hysteria of a 13-year-old deceived by a friend or the gloom of a 15-year-old not invited to a party. These people, we lament, they react to social ups and downs as if their fates depended on them. They're right. They do. Excitement, novelty, risk, the company of peers, these traits may seem to add up to nothing more than doing foolish new stuff with friends. Look deeper, however, and you see that these traits that define adolescence make us more adaptive, both as individuals and as a species. That's doubtless why these traits, broadly defined, seem to show themselves in virtually all human cultures, modern or tribal. They may concentrate and express themselves more starkly in modern Western cultures in which teens spend so much time with each other. But anthropologists have found that virtually all the world's cultures recognize adolescence as a distinct period in which adolescents prefer novelty, excitement, and peers. This near-universal recognition sinks the notion that it's a cultural construct. Culture clearly shapes adolescence. It influences its expression and possibly its length. It can magnify its manifestations. Yet culture does not create adolescence. The period's uniqueness rises from genes and developmental processes that have been selected for over thousands of generations because they play an amplified role during this key transitional period, producing a creature optimally primed to leave a safe home and move into unfamiliar territory. The move outward from home is the most difficult thing that humans do, as well as the most critical, not just for individuals, but for a species that has shown an unmatched ability to master challenging new environments. In scientific terms, teenagers can be a pain, but they are quite possibly the most fully, crucially adaptive human beings around. Without them, humanity might not have so readily spread across the globe.